Ryan Sanders squinted through the purple-tinted atmosphere of Catha as he guided his ship toward the crystalline docking station floating among the clouds. The diplomatic mission briefing lay unopened on his console. He'd meant to read it during the journey, but sleep had seemed more appealing at the time. Approaching Cadhan Diplomatic Port Alpha, the ship's AI announced, "Please state your clearance code." Yeah. Authorization. Sanders 7219 Delta. He rolled his shoulders, working out the kinks from the long flight. The massive floating structure loomed closer, its geometric surfaces refracting the light of the system's twin suns. A holographic projection materialized beside him, displaying a stern-faced Cadhan official. "Human vessel, maintain your current trajectory. A guide will meet you upon landing." "Copy that." Ryan flashed his most winning smile at the hologram, which flickered out without response. Tough crowd. The docking procedure went smoothly, though Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that the port's automated systems were silently judging his every move. He grabbed his diplomatic credentials and stepped into the arrival hall, then stopped short. Standing at the far end of the hall was the most striking woman, alien or human, he had ever seen. Her deep violet skin shimmered in the crystalline light, and her silver hair cascaded down her back in intricate braids. But it was her eyes that caught and held his attention, vertical golden pupils set in iridescent irises, reminiscent of a cat's. The small crowd of officials and travelers gave her a wide berth, creating an obvious bubble of space around her. Ryan watched as a rushing porter nearly crashed into her, only to execute an almost comical leap to avoid contact. "Welcome to Catha, Captain Sanders," she called across the hall. Her voice was musical, slightly accented. "I am Avera, your diplomatic liaison." Ryan strode forward, hand extended. "Please call me Ryan. Great to meet." 3 different officials lunged forward with shouts of alarm. Avera took a quick step back, raising her hands in warning. "Whoa!" Ryan froze mid-step. "Did I break some cultural taboo already?" "You cannot touch me," Avera stated matter-of-factly. "Any physical contact results in immediate molecular destabilization." Ryan blinked. "Come again?" "If you touch me, you will turn to dust." Her golden eyes met his steadily. Instinctively, he flexed his fingers. "So, if I gave you a high five, I'd just disappear?" He couldn't help grinning at the absurdity of it. Avera nodded solemnly. "Are you radioactive or something?" "No, I am simply. You're like a sexy Darth Vader, minus the breathing problems." The words left his mouth before his brain could catch up. To his surprise, a faint purple flush colored her cheeks, though her expression remained neutral. "If you'll follow me, Captain, I'll escort you to the diplomatic quarter. Please maintain a safe distance." The diplomatic quarter turned out to be a sprawling complex of crystal spires and floating platforms connected by shimmering energy bridges. Ryan followed Avera through winding corridors, noting how others scrambled to clear her path. The isolation in her bearing was obvious, even as she maintained perfect diplomatic poise. "So, this condition of yours," Ryan mused, "has it always been this way?" "Since birth." Avera's steps didn't falter. "It is considered a sacred mark by my people, though a rather inconvenient one." "Sacred mark? Like a blessing from your gods?" "Something like that," she said. She paused at an intersection of corridors. "Though some call it the kiss of death." Ryan whistled low. "Dramatic. But there has to be some way around it. Special suits? Force fields? All attempted solutions have failed." A trace of old pain colored her voice. "The effect penetrates any barrier." The reception hall was a grand circular platform where dozens of beings, both Cadhan and representatives from other worlds, mingled beneath a domed ceiling that seemed to be made of living crystal. Servants glided through the crowd, carrying delicate vessels filled with opalescent liquid. "The welcoming reception," Avera explained. "The royal family sends their finest nectar to honor our diplomatic guests." Ryan watched as she accepted one of the crystalline vessels with extreme care, ensuring no part of her touched the servant's hands. Seems like a lonely way to live. Something flickered in her golden eyes. One adapts. A commotion near the platform's edge drew their attention. Two Kathan nobles were engaged in a heated argument, their voices rising above the general murmur. As Avera took a step back to avoid their increasingly animated gestures, a servant behind her stumbled. Before anyone could shout a warning, the servant's hand brushed against Avera's shoulder. In an instant, the unfortunate being dissolved into a cloud of glittering dust. Their serving tray clattered to the floor, the precious vessel of royal nectar tumbling through the air. Without thinking, Ryan lunged forward, one arm catching Avera around the waist while his other hand snatched the falling cup. The entire reception fell silent. Ryan's brain caught up with his actions. He realized he was still holding Avera, pressed against him. He could feel the warmth of her body through the thin fabric of her diplomatic robes. Her eyes were wide with shock, golden pupils dilated. Around them, the remaining servants and guests stared in horror, first at the pile of sparkling dust that had been their colleague, then at Ryan, who remained very much solid and alive. "I'm not dust," Ryan said brilliantly, still holding both Avera and the rescued cup of nectar. "That's impossible." Avera's voice was barely a whisper. Her eyes darted to the dust pile, then back to Ryan's very solid form. Before he could respond, she grabbed his face between her hands and pressed her lips to his. An electric current surged through his body, setting every nerve alight. Heat pooled in his core, and he found himself responding to the kiss before he could think better of it. The crystal cup slipped from his fingers, shattering on the floor. When they broke apart, the silence had transformed into chaos. Officials were shouting, guards were rushing forward, and an alarm was blaring through the crystal structure. Several dignitaries pointed at the dust pile in horror, while others gestured wildly at Ryan and Avera. "Well," Ryan managed, still a bit dazed, "that's one way to say thank you. You don't understand." Avera's usual composure was shattered. "No one has ever survived my touch. Not one being in all my years. They all." She glanced again at the remains of the servant, pain flashing across her features. A circle of guards surrounded them, weapons drawn but held uncertainly. An elderly Kathan in elaborate robes pushed through the crowd, clutching an ancient-looking tablet. "The prophecy," the elder wheezed, holding up the tablet with trembling hands. "The one who survives her kiss. It was foretold." Ryan's jaw dropped. "I'm sorry, what now?" Ryan pulled Ava closer, feeling their connection surge stronger than ever. "Now we have a choice," she said, her golden eyes searching his face. "We can try to break the curse, to restore what was lost. But it's dangerous. The Council wasn't entirely wrong about the power being difficult to control. And if we fail, we die," Ryan finished, a grin spreading across his face. "Well, as a technically married man, I should probably help my wife with her curse problem. This is serious, Ryan. I am serious." He touched her face gently. "I felt what they did to you, what they took from your people. If there's a chance to make it right." The doors began to crack as the constructs broke through. The energy column flared brighter, waiting. "Together?" Ava asked, a rare vulnerability in her voice. Ryan nodded. "Together. But you still owe me a proper first date after this." The doors finally burst open, and the constructs poured in. Ryan and Ava stepped into the energy column, their joined hands raised toward the infinite light above. The Temple of Ascension lived up to its name as ancient power surged through them both, setting the stage for the final confrontation. Power coursed through Ryan's body as the energy column enveloped them. It felt like being struck by lightning while floating in space, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Through their joined hands, he could feel Ava experiencing the same sensation, their minds and bodies resonating with ancient forces. The constructs hesitated at the edge of the column, their unified voices faltering. Through the swirling light, Ryan saw figures entering the chamber, actual Cathan elders this time, their ornate robes marking them as council members. You cannot be allowed to complete the convergence. The lead elder's voice boomed through the chamber. The old powers must remain bound. They were never meant to be bound. Ava called back, her voice carrying an otherworldly resonance. You perverted our heritage, turned a gift into a curse. The energy column pulsed faster as the twin suns of Catha aligned overhead, visible through the temple's crystalline dome. Ryan felt knowledge flooding into his mind, understanding at last who the ancient gods really were. They were human, he gasped. The first explorers who found this place. They discovered the energy, learned to use it, became something more than human. Yes, Ava confirmed, and some returned to Earth, carrying traces of that power in their genes. Genes that would be passed down through generations. Waiting for someone like me, Ryan breathed. He let out a laugh despite the gravity of the situation. Talk about a long-distance relationship. The council members began to chant in the ancient language, raising devices that looked like crystallized shadows. The constructs moved in perfect synchronization, forming a circle around the energy column. They're trying to complete their own ritual, Ava warned, to make the curse permanent. If they succeed... Yeah, let's not let that happen. Ryan squeezed her hand. What do we do? Remember what you saw in the symbols. The original binding ritual can be reversed, but we need to. Dark energy erupted from the council's devices, clashing with the column's pure light. Pain lanced through them both as the competing forces battled. We need to what? Ryan gritted out. Holding on to Ava as reality seemed to warp around them. We need to complete the convergence bond, she gasped, like the first explorers did with my ancestors. A joining of energies, of bloodlines, a marriage. Ryan blinked. A real one? Not just some prophecy technicality. Even in the midst of their crisis, Ava managed to roll her golden eyes. Yes, though I had hoped for a more traditional proposal. Sweetheart, nothing about us has been traditional. He pulled her close as another wave of dark energy battered their protective column. Besides, our first kiss already almost started a war. Might as well make it official. The council's chanting grew louder, their shadows stretching impossibly across the chamber floor. The constructs pressed against the energy barrier. The alignment is nearly complete. Ava warned, we have to act now. Ryan felt the ancient knowledge surging through their connection, showing him what needed to be done. You know, on Earth, we usually get down on one knee for this part. Ryan, right. Saving the world first, romance later. He shifted to face her fully, their joined hands raised between them. Ready? She nodded, and together. They began speaking words in the god tongue, their voices harmonizing in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The energy column erupted with blinding light as the celestial alignment reached its peak. The council members staggered back as the chamber filled with swirling symbols. The constructs began to dissolve, their artificial forms unable to withstand the pure power being channeled. No! The lead elder raised his shadow crystal higher. You will doom us all. The power cannot be controlled. It was never meant to be controlled, Ava declared. It was meant to be shared. The final words of the convergence ritual fell from their lips. Reality itself seemed to hold its breath for a moment. Ryan felt everything, every connection, every possibility, every thread of energy that bound the universe together. And then the wave hit. Pure light exploded outward from their joined hands, shattering the council's shadow crystals and washing away centuries of artificial constraints. The curse that had been woven into Ava's bloodline unraveled like smoke in the wind. The chamber filled with shocked gasps as Cathan guards and officials rushed in, drawn by the commotion. Ava reached out and touched the nearest one, who remained perfectly solid. The curse, she breathed. It's gone. The council members scrambled to retreat, but the guards moved to block their escape. In the chaos, Ryan pulled Ava close. So, He grinned. About that proposal. She silenced him with a kiss. One that definitely didn't turn anyone to dust. 6 months later, the diplomatic quarter of Catha buzzed with activity. Representatives from Earth and Catha gathered for historic negotiations. At the center of it all stood the unlikely couple who had changed everything. The human pilot who could touch Death's kiss, and the Cathan princess who no longer turned people to dust. Ryan adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform, still not quite used to the weight of his new ambassadorial insignia. You know, when I took that first mission, I was just hoping for some interesting flight time. Instead, Ava smirked, her golden eyes dancing with amusement, you got an interplanetary incident, an ancient prophecy, and an alien wife. Disappointed? Are you kidding? He watched as she casually touched the arm of a passing Cathan minister, something that would have been unthinkable months ago. Best mission failure ever. She leaned in. Speaking of which, we have an announcement. The gathered diplomats tensed. We're going on our honeymoon. Ryan grinned as the room erupted in diplomatic chaos. An actual honeymoon. No ancient trials. No paperwork. Just us. Ava laughed, a sound that still turned heads. Just us. And the universe waiting to be explored.